Okay. Sorry. I'm really tired today.
I'm recording you.
I know. That's okay. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much for another opportunity to come together and study your truths. We thank you for everyone who was able to make it to this Bible study. I thank you for helping me to get off of work early today so I can be home and do this study, Lord. Thank you for answering my prayers on that. And thank you for the conversation I was able to have with my coworker today. Lord, please be with her. She's been asking so many questions about your truths. I can't keep pushing her away from studying the stuff that I'm studying. So bless her mind and help her to understand the videos that I sent her, and please guide her, because I don't want to fight against you if it's you putting these questions in her. Please be with Angela in a mighty way, and please guide her mind and help her to see, because she's been really understanding what we've been talking about. Please be with all of us tonight, Lord. Help us to continue to put more things that are getting in our way out of our minds. Help us to continue to discover more truths in the spheres of influence and false streams of information. Help us to continue to discover every prejudice we ever had and the source of it and how to fix it. Help us to continue on in this journey, Lord, and to not fall back. No matter how hard it tests us, help us to keep going. We thank you so much, and we pray all these things in the Lord Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Just a quick. I wanted to mention that as we continue to go forward and do the once a month thing and all the weekly teachings and such, I want to make sure that I clarify something that I have said, I think, before, but I want to make sure it's really clear in case it wasn't. When it comes to the topics are what we need to be focused on, but anybody that is led, because the Holy Spirit will lead any one of us to other portions that will add to the message. And if you are led to do that and lay it out on a line, make the applications, and want to present it, we all can do that. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't say that we had to go straight from a video as we continue to go forward, because I don't want to restrict that in what the Lord wants to do with us. So if you know the material well enough, or if the Lord is leading you to a particular study that relates to all the information warfare, or another study on parables, or another direction when it comes to Constitution, other than the presentations by the speakers that we're focusing on, you can do that. I just want to make sure everybody knew that. So that was all I had to say.
Okay, so I had enough time to transcribe and make the charts and everything and get half of the notes done in a way that I wanted to say them, but the other half I'm going to end up reading off of the transcription, so forgive me for that, but I was kind of down to the wire here today. And I want to start first by talking about something that happened that was really kind of interesting, and I've seen that random things like this seem to happen before a Bible study, and so I'm going to continue to present them when these weird situations happen, because I don't know why else they happen in the exact same time. So anyways, basically, I have this coworker. I think her family generations back were Adventist, but she wasn't. I think her mom left Adventism and then she never experienced it. I don't know. But I know she isn't an Adventist. She doesn't go to church or anything. But she's really nice. She's really sweet. And ever since she's been watching me this whole year, because since the fire, her and I have been working in the same locations constantly, and there's one location where we're both stuck in the same room, and it looks kind of like a bunker, and it's cold and dark, and it's like we chit chat a lot because it's slow going. And she's been asking me a lot of questions, and we've been talking about some politics stuff, and I've been trying to send her to some external sources because I don't know who or what she is, but she doesn't stop asking me these things. And then today she asked me some stuff from the Bible, which ended up directly pertaining to what we've just been studying recently with dress reform and all this stuff. that's where I ended up explaining it to her, because there's a situation going, there's this video going around right now by, who was it? Ted Nugent apparently posted a video about this congresswoman, one of the four that, Tony, what do you keep squinting at? Sorry, yours is the biggest video on my screen right now, and that's all I can see. Let me share hold on a second. So there's this video going around that's the congresswoman that is one of the four that, what's his name, that Trump told them to go back home, the Muslim one, Rashida Tlaib, I think, I don't know how to say her name well. But it's where she's saying that we have to make America an Islamic state, and we need to look at it, all of Americans, as potential Muslims and all of this. It's a 1 or 2 minute clip that is extremely inflammatory. So my coworker comes to me today and shows me this, and she's like, did you see this? This is so scary. Like, this really scares me. What if they come in here and try to take this country over and do all this crazy stuff? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, first of all, this video looks ancient. I don't know from when it's from. And second of all, it's only a clip. You need to look at the whole video. So we were talking about it. I ended up telling her that, because people are really scared, it is like Ellen White says, it's a dark religion or whatever. But what she's saying, I'm like, this is nothing different from how Christians view converting the whole world. They try to infiltrate everywhere also to convert everyone they possibly can. I should have told her about the history with the papacy and all that. But it's no difference. And people are super prejudiced against it. And the right post these inflammatory videos. And so we had this huge discussion on it. And I came home today. Let me see if I can open the email up really quick. And I looked into it because it's causing people to have this hatred for Muslims, and eventually those people, we're going to talk about it in our Bible study tonight, the refugees from the Middle East that end up coming over here or trying to find safety in Europe. No one wants to take them in. No one wants to take responsibility. And everyone keeps passing around, or the right keeps passing around these quotes and different things that make everyone hate those people even more. But there's this article I ran into. I'm going to read it real quick. Let me see if I can share, because I thought it was fascinating. So we need to really be actively, anything that we ever thought was something scary and important, we have to look back at it now and look at the other perspective to see if it was a conspiracy. We have to do that because a lot of stuff keeps coming up. And here's another one. So this video that's going around, this is what actually is happening. Sharifa al-Khatib died in 2004, but the Muslim scholar's words are still present, including a video from 30 years ago that was widely spread on social media in recent days, in which she calls for spreading the Islamic faith across America. But the video, posted by the verified account of Ted Nugent, has gone viral with an erroneous caption wrongly identifying the speaker as the new congresswoman from Michigan. So that video isn't actually the new congresswoman from Michigan. It was some other Muslim lady speaking at a conference they had. It was not this congresswoman. It says, listen very closely to the new congresswoman from Michigan, what the enemies of America believe, especially on Memorial Day, so we don't let them continue to destroy the wonderful American system of individual freedom that so many died for. Dear God in heaven, his caption reads. So what did he just say? Don't let them continue to destroy the wonderful American system of individual freedom. You literally are telling people to hate these people. Don't give them their individual freedom so that we can keep the individual freedom. It's completely nonsense. And then Michigan does have a new congresswoman who is Muslim, Representative Rashida Tlaib, who became one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress last year. But as we said, the video doesn't show Tlaib or any other member of Congress. The video of al-Khatib, a writer, scholar, and founder of the Northern American Council for Muslim Women, is from and I thought this was interesting because it's from August 1989. Muslim American Political Awareness Conference. The full video of the conference is available on C-SPAN. Tlaib, who was born in 1976, and it goes in. And I went to watch that full video, and basically what she's telling those people is, you need to be more active in your children's lives because our children aren't understanding our identity as Muslims anymore. They go to school and they tell them all this crazy nonsense at school, and Muslim people are lazy. No one wants to listen to anyone else. People in Islam want to argue against each other. They're not cooperative. They especially don't want to listen to any constructive criticism from women. She's basically just reprimanding Muslims for being lazy because at that time, no one in America really knew about Muslims. And she said, no one in this country even knows that we're people that exist. No one knows what a Muslim is. No one knows what this means. And then our kids are too scared to even say that they're Muslim. So they're just wanting to have they're having like a little identity crisis, and she's saying you have to at least educate your children in what we believe in. That was taken out of context, that little clip, and now it's turned into this huge inflammatory virus that's going around all the internet, and all these people are getting super angry at Muslims all over again. It's just feeding the fire. So if
like what Russia is doing, like people are doing now. So now it's just spreading, because if you notice in a lot of different other news things, even people on Facebook are putting stuff like InfoWars and war things, the same terms that we're using.
Yeah, so basically, if you run into anyone who shows you this video or starts freaking out about it, tell them to actually look into it, because it's just the same thing over and over again. So I'm pretty sure some of you guys are going to run into it, because I've had at least 2 or 3 people right now who have come to me and shown me this video, and no one has actually. You see that it's a short clip. You see that it's taken out of context. Not one person did the 2-second Google search to find out what it is and where it came from and what it actually means. The information is literally at your fingertips, and when you choose not to look at it, it is willful ignorance, because you have the ability to find out where it's from and what it actually says. So if you don't make an active effort to actually find out the truth, isn't that like willful ignorance?
Amen.
Because we have that. So when things like that come up, 5G, whatever you want, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that's still going to come up that we heard of and we forgot about. I particularly want to look into GMO foods, because I remember people getting so upset over GMO foods, and I remember the scientists saying that the science shows that it's fine. I am perfectly willing and happy to feed this to my children. And I thought that the fact that they made that statement was the most horrific and evil thing I've ever heard. But I bet you I'm wrong on this somehow. So I'm going to be looking into that when I have a chance. I'm really wondering how that's going to, because that really goes against everything I've ever thought about food. I don't know. Anyways, we'll see. Because that was a huge controversial issue. And whenever there's a controversial issue, something's going on there. So that's something I need to look into. Anyways, my spiel on that is over. The basic point is, I think God is going to be working through other people and through different things around us to bring us into contact with these different issues. And I think because we now know about the 2 different streams, our job is to look into those things and see where they fit. Do you see what I'm saying? Because God is trying to put everything in order in our minds. If we're going to go out there and give a message, we have to have things organized in our minds, and we have to understand what's what and who's who. So that's all I wanted to say. But the other thing is, it's going to tie into this Bible study, because it's feeding this prejudice and hatred and animosity for all these groups of people. And a lot of people are falling for the bait, and you can't do that. It's just propagating hatred nonstop. And that's the whole reason why this disinformation warfare is so evil. Because, yeah, anyways. All right. So, test presentation number 9. In presentation number 8, we looked really deeply at the counterfeit and how it matches our line. Sister Lana presented that. So we're going to review that really quick. Where's my mouse? Okay, here we go. So you have Satan is counterfeiting the Alpha and the Omega histories of modern Israel. So we're going to start in 1798. William Miller begins an increase of knowledge. So you have that here. And then in 1819, I think it's supposed to be 1819, not 1899. No, it is 1899. Okay. Eugenio Pacelli becomes a priest. No, Eugenio Pacelli became an increase of knowledge. It is 1819, never mind. Because then you have, sorry, it's 1899. He can't live that long. He can't live till like 1945 if he's born in 1819. That's impossible. So 1899. Then you go back up here to 1816 to 1818. William Miller has everything in a capsule form. His whole message is in a capsule form. And then May 13th, 1917, we can mark Lucia and Pacelli. Lucia begins her getting visions, and they continue until almost her death. And it has a 46-year period of restoring the temple for them as well, like you do for us here. And in 1917, Pacelli goes to Germany to begin his work. Then we go to 1833. William Miller formats the message. He receives his credentials. I think she said there's a document that's produced that entails all that. 1933 is the Code of Canon Law signed by Hitler, and that's formalizing a union between the Nazi Germany and the papacy, which they needed to be able to fulfill Fatima. At this time, Fatima is accepted. This is the second secret to Fatima from Mary. It's to take down the Soviet Union. You have 1844 and 1945. It ends in disappointment. Both have scattering. There are dark periods for Adventism and Catholic Church as communism spreads over Eastern Europe. And you have November 1st, 1850. They are given the call to make a new chart right here. Ellen G. White says God is trying to regather his people, making another attempt to regather his people. November 1st, 1950, Pacelli comes out to a crowd of 1 million strong and talks about the dogma of Mary and the dogma of the Assumption of Mary. And he starts resurrecting the messages of Fatima. So you have that there. 1945, it's in here. It's not on the line. We want to mark that the entire year is also dedicated to Fatima and Mary. Massive pilgrimages were arranged to Portugal, right, in this time period also, and it all ended in failure. 1863, you have organization in the SDA Church, but you also have a rejection of the prophetic message. 1962, you have organization occurs in the Catholic Church, but the Catholics reject communism as the secret secret of Fatima. They don't accept that anymore. 1886, internal civil war between SDA and new branch of teaching. This new branch is teaching revolutionary new ideas. So you have Butler versus Wagner, and you can also see it as Jones versus Smith. Both sides are half right and half wrong. Catholic Church, you have Malachi Martin versus the Jesuits. Malachi Martin's on the side of John Paul II, and they're attacking the Jesuits. You have leadership and a radical group bringing radically new ideas into the Catholic Church. 1888, you have half right, half wrong, the message there. And then 1989, half right and half wrong because of the work of the Jesuits. The St. Galen Mafia, they find Bergoglio and make him a cardinal. So, okay, let's see here. 2001 to 2013. What's happened here? Okay. Right, okay. So 2001 to 2013, you have a civil war, you have a formalization, and then you have a civil war inside of the Catholic Church. 2019, it's over off the side here. Elder Jev steps down and throws the mantle to Elder Parminder. He completely endorses Parminder, but at the same time, he completely undermined his message about 2012 because he was saying that they were both half right and half wrong, but that wasn't the case then. So in 2014, you also mark Samuel Snow and the second leadership in the SDA as well, right? Because 2014, Parminder was saying there was going to be a Sunday law. So you have new leadership, which is Parminder. Midnight is 2014 because it's a Sunday law. So you have July 21st there. That's how you can connect both. So you have Samuel Snow and William Miller. You have Jeff and Parminder. So early April, Pope Benedict, he comes out of the dark, as it were, and he endorses Pope Francis, but then he completely undermines him, and he says that all the abuse, sexual abuse, and scandals that have been going on in the Catholic Church has been because of this whole liberal hippie movement since the 1960s. So he's blaming all of that theology. And also, we want to make sure that we realize that, I think I looked it up, and it wasn't quite 1,000 years. I think it was like at least 600 years since there's been two living popes around at the same time. And it's been so long, and so you have one pope that's currently operating, and the other one is still alive also. And he's actually hasn't let go. He's been pretty active. And there's a lot, I mean, there really is, if you look into it, there is a huge civil war going on in the Catholic Church against the conservatives and the liberals. And Benedict has been pretty active. He still is, he should have stepped out of the light. He should have like completely stopped, but he hasn't. And because he hasn't, all the people who are loyal to him keep doing what he wants. And so you have this huge, massive mischief in the Catholic Church right now because of that. I think it's interesting that Satan can't rally his forces together to do what they're supposed to do, but Jeff was able to do what he was supposed to do because our line is a line of success, and it happens perfectly because he did take the mantle over to Parminder, and he has stepped down. So it's actually operating as a line of success should in our time, if you look at it. And also because he said what he said in the camp meeting in April, it was actually a blessing because Sister Tess said that she never would have looked, or we never would have studied out the histories of failure and success. And I think that's pretty important because for us to look back at Millerites, there were inconsistencies there. So there would have been questions in our minds, what if we're going to fail again like the Millerites, right? Because I know I've had some of those questions myself. And when this whole study with failure and success came out, you can see that no, this is it. We're doing it right, and it is happening. So it is the history of success. So you have nothing to worry about or fear. It's just up to you if you choose to stick to it or not. So it's very hopeful to have these lines out. So it was a huge blessing that he did that, and it caused this study to come out. So that's it for this line. Let's go here now, because then we're going to go to the histories of failure, and success. Through our studies, we find that there's actually two histories of failure, right? And then a history of success. Millerite time, you had a failure. You had another failure in 1888. Excuse me. Sorry. And then the line of the 144,000 is a history of success. And so you had Moses, when they came out of Egypt, that history ended in apostasy. It ended in failure. Their captivity in Babylon, when they came back, they rebuilt the temple. That history ended in Pharisees, which we're calling that a failure. We're calling Pharisees a failure. And then in Christ's time, it was a success. And what was I going to say? Right, now I see, let's see if this is what that is. No. So we also want to look at the other reason why we know that we can have a history of failure, and success. I actually need to get my little drawing pad. Hang on just a second. Because I didn't draw this one on there. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move this and add another page. So we have in the battles between the king of the north and the king of the south, we're gonna do that. Okay. You have 4 battles, and what we're gonna say is that you need to see also here 2 histories of failure and then 1 history of success in battle format. So let's say we have a line, and then you have ipsis is the first one, and this one is an alliance. So you have north plus south. And then you have Heraclea. Here you have north goes against the south wins. Asculum, the south goes against the north, and the south wins. And then Beneventum, you have the north goes against the south, and the north wins. So you have south, south, north. So for the history of King of the North, for it to be a history of success, right? Because success is at the end here. This is where you ultimately need to win. If these battles you lose, that's fine. But here's where you become established. This is the war. If you win the war, then you are on top of everything. So the history of this line of success has to be failure, failure, and then ultimately success over here. This is what that whole history needs to look like. So then when we go back to here, this is what we see with Millerites, 1888, 144,000. Moses, Babylon, and the history of Christ in Rome. So it's fitting perfectly. And then it's another little counterfeit, I guess you could say. So the history of Christ in Rome was perfect only as far as they listened. The problem was in the history of Christ in Rome was Judas, and his problem was that he was listening to two different streams of information. He was mostly listening to Christ because he followed him closely. Every single day he was with him, but he only listened to the Pharisees a little tiny bit, and that was enough to destroy him. It wasn't just enough to destroy him, because then he in turn talked to the apostles, and the apostles didn't listen to the Pharisees, but they did listen to Judas. And that was enough to make them run into that room and hide themselves. So you just need a little bit. He tells them that you can just get a little bit of the other stream and it's fine, but it's not. You cannot listen. We have Judas's in our movement now. It's an internal work because Judas was internal with the apostles, telling people that you can listen to 2 separate streams of information, and you can't do that. So anyways, now we're going to go to a map. Where did I just... Let me move this out of the way. Over here. Okay. So let's look at this. Before we go to the battles of Pyrrhus, we're going to talk about some of the conflicts that we see in our day. And to do that, we want to know Pyrrhus. In Daniel 11, 4-15, the king of the north and the king of the south. Those are, so let's say king of the north, you have Seleucus. And then king of the south, we're just going to say as Ptolemy. It changes between those 15 verses, the different kings, but as just a point of reference so we don't get confused. What what are they fighting over? So you have this one in Egypt. You have this one in Babylon. Is Ptolemy trying to take Babylon?
They're fighting over coal Syria.
Right. So they're fighting over an area between them, and they're fighting for influence over this area. So what they're fighting for is a sphere of influence, right? So what gives, we're going to look at this map really quick because we need to understand what's going on, because the same thing is happening in our time now on this map. You have this issue with natural gas resources, and there's a war over spheres of influence that's really being run by this specific thing in the Middle East. So what gives Russia so much leverage in Europe? It's natural gas, because they provide up to 25% of the natural gas in Europe. And it's transported through these already existing pipelines. And this is what they use against Europe as leverage. So whenever you have Ukraine or Georgia and Russia is in a conflict with them, all they have to do in the dead of winter is just turn off the tap and have everyone freeze to death. So Obama actually addressed this in 2014, and he said that we need to bypass Russia's pipelines and find a way to get more oil into Europe that isn't dependent on Russia, so that we can free them. What he's saying is we need to free them from that sphere of influence, because that's what is dominating them right now. So we have this problem. There's all this natural gas resources in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf area. That's where's my, there I am. So in this area here, and you have all this natural gas resources, but the only way they have, let me make this bigger. The only way they have to get it to Europe is get it on ships and take it to Europe that way. And I don't see that they're going through any of these weird little rivers or streams. So I'm guessing the only way is you'd have to go, which that would be horribly expensive. You'd have to go outside of here, down here, and go all the way around to here, and then take it to Europe, which would be extremely expensive, and it is expensive. So what ends up happening is that they still end up using Russia's oil because they can't afford that. So they're trying to find an affordable way to get gas into Europe. And so you have, in 2009, Qatar. Where's my little Qatar? There we are. Okay. Qatar is this little country right over here. And it strikes oil. And so Qatar is with the United States, right? We can see that here. Qatar is on the side of the United States. And so what they want to do is they want to get their gas into Europe. And to do that is they have to go up here. They have to go through Syria. They have to go through Turkey to get it into Europe. Okay? So it would have to go through also Saudi Arabia, which is right here, right? Which is fine. So it has to go through Saudi Arabia, and it has to go through Syria, and it has to go through Turkey. In her studies, she didn't say who Iraq is affiliated with, so we're not going to look at that right now. But we are going to look at who, let's say, Syria. So we want Syria, we want Turkey, we want Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. And we're going to look at Yemen as well. So for the U.S., there are some people who sometimes feel bold enough to play both sides, but generally this is the playing order that they're stuck in. You have Turkey is on the side of the U.S. You have Qatar is on the side of the U.S. And you have Saudi Arabia is on the side of the U.S. So this one is good. This one is good. But this one This one is the problem right here. And it has to go smack dab through Syria. So that's an issue because Syria is on the side of Russia. So Syria says no, Assad says no in 2009. Now you have in 2011, Iran has access to natural gas. They decide they want to build a pipeline to Europe, and the only option they have is it has to go through Iraq, then through Syria. So they don't want to go through Turkey because, like you can see on there, Turkey is a U.S. country, so they think they can bypass that. Their plan is to go through Iraq and go through Syria and then go through the Mediterranean and end up in Greece somewhere because Greece is right here. So that's their plan. And what does Syria say this time? Because that's the only country of relevance that's an issue right now. Syria and Assad, they say yes. And they say yes because Iran, it comes under Russia. So they're all both of them are part of that sphere of influence. Syria and Iran are on the same side of the issue. That was in early 2011. So what happened late 2011? This is where you have Arab Spring in Syria. That is why these pipelines never get built. What started as a civil war turned into a huge proxy war against the U.S. and Russia, or between the U.S. and Russia, and it's been lasting for the past 8 years. So whoever controls Syria controls how Persian Gulf resources find their way into Europe. You have to use Syria because Israel, so this area, Israel and Palestine, this thing is so small. This area here is a super volatile region. You can't depend on them. They have so many turning and overturnings, and they don't pay attention to any side. They have their own agendas that they're focused on. So you can't really depend on them to get any pipelines through. The only ones that are solidly in their place on their side of influence are these countries that we have been looking at. So where are we? So whenever you have a revolution in one of those countries, they never last long, and they can't because they don't have that many resources. They usually maybe last a year and then another dictator takes power and then goes through, but that's not what's been going on. So why is this revolution in Syria never ending, and why is it lasting so long? They don't have the strength to keep it going so long. But what there is really happening here is because before dictators come and go. Okay, so what we know is happening is when Assad looks weak or he looks like he's going to lose, Russia sends these planes and just bombs his enemies. And when Assad looks like he's getting a little too strong, then the United States sends its planes and bombs him. So who is actually suffering in this whole situation? It's the people, right? All the people in Syria. And not just Syria. So you have another place that's suffering really bad. It's the biggest humanitarian crisis that's been going on for at least the past few years. And she talks about that, and it's Yemen. So Yemen is neither side of what the US or Russia. But Yemen has the same problem that Syria has. So Syria and pretty much any other country seems to have the same pattern, just like Spain did in World War II. You have the government, and then you have the rebels. And I spelled that wrong probably, but that's fine. Yemen. You have the gov, and you have the rebels. I don't know which side is which, but you have two factions. And you have one is being led by Saudi Arabia and the other by Iran. So Yemen is a tiny proxy war within the bigger proxy war scheme of things. But let's see here. This has been going on for the past 10 years. and it leads to 14 million people on the brink of starvation, 10 million people actively starving. And it's all happening because Saudi Arabia and Iran are conducting a proxy war through that country. And if you have Saudi Arabia over here on the US side and Iran over here, these countries where they don't have enough resources to conduct these types of warfare. It has to be global superpowers that are providing them this equipment, because they can't get access to enough of it to conduct these things on its own. So you have the US arming and equipping Saudi Arabia to fight these wars in Yemen. And you have Russia doing the same for Iran. So you have, when Saudi and Arabian airplanes go to bomb Yemen, US airplanes, the ones that fuel the airplanes in midair, they'll go to Saudi Arabia, they'll fill with fuel their airplanes, they'll give them US weapons, they'll provide them with weapons. And then those will go on into Yemen and completely devastate that country. And Russia's doing the same for Iran. And they have been bombing airports, hospitals, schools, everything you can imagine. So the US is supplying Saudi Arabia with their weapons. Saudi Arabia is conducting war crimes in Yemen. And then you have the issue with the officials from the UN. They went to Obama and said that if the US doesn't stop supporting Saudi Arabia, the US is going to be charged with war crimes. So this has been going on for a long time, and everyone knows. It's not like it's a hidden secret. Depending on which stream of information, one stream has been explaining it very clearly. So then what Obama did is he brought in legislation and started to pull back from Saudi Arabia. Trump undid all of that. He said, you can't charge us with crimes. You can't even investigate us. And then he started to take away the restrictions that Obama put in place for that were limiting the type of weapons that you can sell to Saudi Arabia. And he's going to arm them with more weapons and crazier weapons than Obama ever did. So that's what's going on over there right now. There was also a ship with Yemeni refugees off the coast of Europe somewhere. It was rescued. And this is the issue that it turns into, because this is the problem. So they were trying to find a home for these Yemeni refugees. No one in Europe wanted to take them. What everyone is saying is that this isn't our problem. These people are very problematic. They cause all this chaos. We don't want them here. They're going to do the same thing to our countries. This is some of my notes in between this, because it's stuff that you could see clearly happening. Because when you look there, they say they're going to do the same thing to our country that's happened to theirs. They need to fix their own problems. This isn't our problem. This is their problem. But the problem is, it's not their problem. It is our problem, because these things would have ended. There might be a dictator there in Yemen if the rebellion ended quickly, but there wouldn't be 10 million people starving. The only reason it's going on so long, the only reason so many people are dying, so many people are starving, and so many people are leaving from there is because the United States and Russia and all the other countries that contribute, because there's within the spheres of influence of the United States, you also have Canada, you have other countries in Europe, and same with Russia, you have other countries in Europe and other countries in the area. They're all contributing to this disaster. But when those refugees go to get help from the people who destroyed their home, those people say, oh, not our problem. You have all these issues. We don't want to deal with you. So is it their fault? No, it's not. The conflicts there, they would have been over with quickly. They might have ended in dictatorship, like we said, but it would have been better than what's happening now. So no one wants to take responsibility. And that's the problem. They'll say things like America first, Germany first, France first, Canada first. These are all fueling the conflict. All these countries that are not wanting to take responsibility, they're the ones that are actually responsible for these issues. So if you look at slavery, you first had the Civil War, then that was finished, and you had the North won. But then 100 years later, you have the Civil Rights Movement. So what does that mean? That means the problem never ended, right? So you talk about, let's go to the next one. Let's talk about resources and proxy war, because it's the same thing with slavery is happening today in this area here. So you have this area has turned into what Africa used to be, right? Let's go to the Arctic now. This was, she drew this map manually, but I was shocked I was actually able to find it. Let's see. Here it is. Here's the map. So whenever she said the Arctic, I don't know why I was thinking the South Pole. I was thinking Antarctica, but that's not what it is. It's the North Pole. Because I was wondering how Russia had its claws in there, but this is the reason why. It's actually the North Pole. So in the North region, let's look at this map because I thought it was really interesting. So I'm pretty sure this is the same map she used also, because it has that same drawing she had. This red line here, the dotted one, average ice extent for September in 1979 to the year 2000. So the ice went all the way out here, all the way out here, all the way out here, right? And now this purple with blue inside, this is the sea ice extent in September 2007, which only goes out to here. It used to go out to here, and now it's shortened. So it's been decreasing in size. And this is 2007. I can't imagine what it is like now. All right? So this area here, because I was wondering, it says Russia here, and you don't see a lot of oil mining and all of that, but actually this whole region. Do you guys see this in this section? Where's my pen thing? This whole area here is Russia. And then you have United States over here. You have Greenland. You have Iceland. We're going to talk about them in a minute. And you have Norway. Okay. So these red circles right here, major development sites. That's the red circles. The gray gas and oil prospective areas and resources. So you see in Russia's area, you have all of this prospective area, and they've been taking advantage of it. The U.S. has it too. So they're going to have all kinds of shenanigans over this, because you have Alaska right here. So where am I? So here's Alaska. This is the U.S. So I think this would be Canada, actually. Yeah, that's Canada. So all these countries are now fighting for the oil resources here in the Arctic. The red dots are gas production areas. So you have, look at how Russia has the most of them all of these red dots. These are all Russia right here. And then green dots are oil production. You have a ton of those among the red also. It looks like Christmas over here. It's so much. The dark square thing is main mining sites. So you have all of these here for Russia. Look at that. All of these. Here, all over. And then you have the green line is main existing gas oil pipelines. So look at this. Look at all of these pipelines that Russia has. This is, they have been earlier than everyone else. And then you have the green dotted, which is main project gas oil pipeline. So those are the ones that are in the process of getting done. So you have some in Finland and Sweden, and you have some here in Canada. But the major development sites, and then the red dots and the green dots and the main pipelines, you can see the majority of them here are in Russia. So this is what's happening over there right now in the Arctic. Let's see. So the size of the Arctic decreased. Oh, and then you have Iceland, little Iceland over here, down here, so far away from it all, right? And they're super excited, and their president says, this is fantastic for Iceland. This is going to be so great for our country. The Arctic has become the new Africa. And he said this in a positive way, right? Because he's seeing this as an opportunity for resources to go to his country. And so what she's wanting to point out here is that the same issue we have with slavery, it's the same mindset. It never ended. It's the same mindset with colonialism. These ideas have never ended. So then if the Arctic is the new Africa and the Middle East is the new Africa, no one wants to help the people there. You have also Mexico, you have guns and drugs there, and they're all being funded by the United States also. And now some of the countries wherever Putin got into, he's gotten in on that as well. We need to reason from cause to effect. Why all the immigrants? If you want to stop guns, where are they coming from? You need to reason from cause to effect. If you want to stop refugees, reason from cause to effect. If you want to stop global warming, reason from cause to effect. Because what they're doing here, they're so excited about it, but this is going to have huge global consequences. But they don't care about that. They don't take responsibility for what they're doing. So you have to reason from cause to effect. Why are immigrants coming here? Why are so many refugees trying to escape their countries? It isn't just because it's a bad place and that's just how it's always been. There's something else going on because it's always been a bad place and that never so many of them have been trying to leave it. But now all of a sudden it's become so excruciatingly horrible that they're willing to risk dying out in the middle of the ocean. They're willing to risk getting put in immigration camps at the south border of the United States and sit there separated from their children, starving to death in their own mess. The Congress people that have been in the meetings, they've been saying it right. Word travels fast. So when you try to say, let's put them in these camps so that word will travel fast so that it will decrease immigration, the fact that it's not decreasing immigration just goes to show that the situation in their country is so horrible. They know what they're risking coming here, and they're willing to do that anyways. That should horrify every person if your family had to go through that. Man, from watching those things, it's really, really a sad, scary thing that's happening over there. So this is what the left doesn't do that the right doesn't do. They reason from cause to effect, because no one wants to reason from cause to effect because it would put responsibility back on them, and no one wants to take responsibility. So when Trump and Putin met in Japan, these are the issues that they're talking about, right? It's not about Putin doesn't want America and Trump doesn't want Russia. What they want is these spheres of influence. They want these areas here in the Arctic. They want the areas in the Middle East for their resources. South America has resources also because of how that land grows. There's a lot of resources there as well. Everything that they want is just spheres of influence. That's all they're fighting over. So when you have Trump and Putin meet and someone asks them, what did you guys talk about? All they do is say Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria. They just start listing the countries because it's all over spheres of influence. So now I'm going to go to the notes that I didn't get to. And we're just going to read the transcripted part of it. And then I'll probably stop in between and go over some notes and some different things. So let's go over this. So let's go back to Pyrrhus. We took Pyrrhus in these battles, and to conflate the two lines, I had some difficulty understanding what she was trying to say here, but we'll work it through and see if we can figure it out. We took Pyrrhus in these battles to conflate the two lines and to bring Alpha and Omega together. So you have Alpha history of World War II on the bottom, and you have the Omega history of 2014 on top. So we're just bringing them together to compare and contrast them. And then at Ipsis, they are allies. So you have the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in World War II at the beginning there, and then you have an alliance in 2014. So let's look at that alliance. At the Battle of, let me read this. The King of the North and the King of the South are in alliance in 2014. And then you have three battles, Heraclea, Asculum, and Beneventum. At the Battle of Heraclea, who comes against who? It's a king of the north comes against the king of the south, right? And the king of the south wins. When we brought that to our reform line, we recognized through combining our histories that this alliance was 2014. So we're going back to this here. And we were able to do that because we pinned it to the war in Ukraine. We saw that Thurii turned to Rome, and when it turned to the king of the north, it was invaded by Tarentum. Tarentum is the king of the south. So let's draw this out because I'm getting confused by this. When I was trying to read it, I didn't know what she was trying to say. So let's say we have Thurii here, and you have Tarentum here, and you have Rome. So Thurii appealed to Rome. So this is all king of the north, and then this is king of the south. And they went and attacked them. And they won, right? Okay. Yeah, okay, so that's going back to Heraclea. All right. So we saw that Thurii turned to Rome, and when it turned to the king of the north, it was invaded by Tarentum. Tarentum is the king of the south. We have already connected that battle. It is specifically Ukraine. If you're going to mark an invasion of the king of the south into a sphere of influence, it's 2014 and the conflict in Ukraine. Then we see Ipsus. In this history, the king of the north and the king of the south, they are fighting together, ideological enemies. It's unexpected, but they are fighting on the same side. Heraclea, it's all broken down, and the king of the north attacks the king of the south, and the king of the south wins. So I'm not sure how, because I know she's saying that you have Russia, right? And then you have Ukraine. That's not accurate geographically at all, so don't worry about that. And then you have the US. Ukraine appealed to US, and I think US told them that they have to work it out with the UN and the EU if they want to be a part of that. So, okay. So the US couldn't get involved to help Ukraine out. They were telling Ukraine to go to the EU and the UN, from what I remember. And when Ukraine tried to do that, then you had Crimea happen, and that whole situation went down. And you have Russia entering into Ukraine and taking it as a sphere of influence. But I don't know how that, I guess because that's before Heraclea, Asculum, or Beneventum. It's before Ipsus, I think. So I guess that's why that battle matches. I'm not 100% sure, though. So anyways, so to bring this into the history of World War II, we have the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and then the invasion of Poland. The invasion of Poland is where Hitler and Stalin are in an alliance. Without an alliance, with the Soviet Union, Hitler would never have been able to take Poland because it would have been suicide. So to understand this, you have to look at Hitler's background. He was a soldier in World War II, and Germany. Oh, I should have gotten a map of that. We're going through these notes pretty fast, so I'm actually going to do that right now, if you guys don't mind, because I think it's important to look at that. So I'm going to just hang in there. It'll only take a second. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. We need a simple one. This one. That's not. Okay. Bring that there. Bring this here. You guys see it? Yay, nay?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Why isn't that not? That's fine. It doesn't matter. So you have this issue that Germany has, and it had in World War I also, even though it was smaller. I think in World War I, Germany was about like yay big, right? Because you had Austria and Hungary, the Austria-Hungarian Empire, which was like this whole region area. Anyways, it has the same issues today that it had then, which is the issues that France and Spain and the United Kingdom don't have. It's enclosed on this side and it's enclosed on this side, right? So Germany has a western front with an enemy, and it has an eastern front with another enemy, which this is just an extension of Russia. So I don't know why this isn't written here. We're gonna write that there, right? So for him to go and invade Poland without having peace with Russia, say that he annexes Poland, right? So now you have a Western front and you have an Eastern front battle. And this one is a pretty big front if you look at it. It's a lot of resources are here. So he can't do this. He can't fight a war here and he can't fight a war over here. That would be overextending himself too much. So we have that same thing that happened in World War I. He saw the issue that was happening in World War II. So in World War II, Germany was at the same disadvantage. So when he wants to invade Poland, and Britain and France told him that if he invades Poland, they're going to attack you, he needs to have peace with the Soviet Union. He has to know that he can safely focus on the Western Front before facing a war on both fronts. Best case scenario completely occurs at the west and then turns toward the east. He knows that if they begin the war the same way they did in World War I, which they did simultaneously, so they had war on two fronts, it's going to end the same way it ended in World War I. So there are three parts to this pact that we're going to move to that pact that Hitler made with Stalin now. So I'm going to go back to that, the battles. So we have three parts to the pact. And the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact just has the first two. This was another pact that was signed during the same time, talking about resources. But the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact had two parts. The first part was, where am I? The first part was a non-aggression. It's a promise that when Hitler is at war in the West, Stalin isn't going to take an advantage of the conflict and invade from the East. So first of all, they signed a non-aggression pact, a promise that they won't go to war, while the other was going on. So that's why you have an alliance at World War II, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So what's the second part? The second part is of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is the spheres of influence. They're going to take a map and start cutting up all the countries between them. They pretty much just cut their way through the Eastern Europe and divide it between themselves. So the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is these two parts. It's the non-aggression and its spheres of influence. Around the same time, what Hitler needs just as much to engage war on the Western Front is access to resources. So they don't have nearly enough resources to conduct a war. They actually calculated the resources Germany had back in the day too. And when Germany invades the Soviet Union at Operation Barbarossa, how long that invasion would have lasted if Hitler had never had already taken resources from the Soviet Union. It would have lasted less than a day, basically, is what they figured out. So if you think about how Hitler must have calculated that, he would have known how little resources he had. And he still went through with all this crazy attacking and these crazy plans. I mean, I don't know if you're crazy or just have a really big ego. I don't know how you see your resources are so tiny and you're like, sure, I'll battle the world. This seems like a great idea right now. It's pretty incredible how that even happened. So then we come to August 1940, which is after Poland, right? Their relationship breaks down. And over the course of a month, the Soviet Union stopped sending any resources through to Hitler. They have a breakdown in their relationship over these two issues, over non-aggression and over spheres of influence. So the sphere of influence, they're having disagreements of over which countries they get. So the other issue is that they're having a disagreement because Germany isn't paying the Soviet Union anymore. And when they are paying, it's like plans for the Bismarck. They're not complete plans. They're only half completed. So they're withholding information, which on the withholding information part, I had a question on, because I don't think I see this as an issue with Russia. But if you guys watch the trade wars, and I know Elaine did, the United States, because China is red too. China is red everything, and China is combined with Russia. It was combined with Russia in the Cold War. They were all both Soviet. Russia is combined now with Putin. China is combined with Russia always. So China was Soviet, China is red. China is combined with Putin. They're always together. So I think they kind of have to be combined, because in the trade wars with China, the United States, the issue that they have going on now is because the United States didn't want to share their technology with Russia. There was some unfair trade agreement, and you have an economic trade agreement with China. I don't know what trade agreement we have with Russia, but this part of withholding information really seems to match that China situation. And I always wondered why we separated China and Russia, because they were both communists. They were both so, red, both of them. So I don't know if that's going to end up coming up in the future, but I always had questions on that. So, and I know I'm not the only one, because if we're going to think about it in terms of independent ministries, China is an independent ministry, 100%, isn't it? It's not a part of the kingdom of the king of the north, of the counterfeit or of the true. So it is an independent ministry. And it's an independent ministry that matches exactly what Russia has been doing also. Even more so, because they've been stayed communist this whole time. China never wanted to let that go. Russia has a semblance of democracy, but it's not really, because there's still like a communist system involved, even though it's not played out in the open. So something's going on there, and I don't know what, but it's going to become important, I think, eventually. Okay, so where was I? Hang on, I have a hair that's, hold on. Okay. Okay, so you have that withholding of information, and you have the conflict over spheres of influence and resources. So their alliance breaks down for approximately a month. The end of that month, they met in secret. They redrew the spheres of influence. They came to a new economic agreement, and their relationship was both stronger and weaker than before. It was stronger in the sense that they decided over the spheres of influence, and their economic agreement was stronger, that the Soviet Union was sending a lot more supplies through to Germany than it was before. But it was weaker because now Hitler knew that he could no longer depend on the Soviet Union. He knew that Stalin was going to use this against him, and he started to think he needed to invade much sooner. It left a lasting damage to their alliance. So that's August 1950, secret meeting redraw. We are going to discuss that because we understand that that's 2018 where their relationship is breaking down. So that's last year. And I want us to actually break down what this happened there and how we see it repeated. What I want us to see is with Poland. Poland began World War II on what front? It began it on the Western Front, right? Because you see this map and it looks like Poland is here, which is on the eastern side, right? But you have to remember, Poland has no strength. They can't fight. They can't do anything. They're too weak. That's why Germany wants to take them. The problem is that the UK and France said that if you invade Poland, they're gonna attack. So they're gonna attack Germany here on the Western Front. So that's the issue. The issue isn't Poland. The issue is by getting Poland, you have war on the Western Front, because that's where the UK and that's where France are. So you have war on the Western Front. So first of all, war on the Western Front from 2016 at his election, and who's waging that war? It's him, right? And then there's a point in where we mark Rafia and describe it as war on the Eastern Front. So we have here and here war on the Western Front, and so here at Asculum and here is where we're marking war on the Eastern Front. Asculum is Rafia, guys, right? Yeah. I should know this, I'm pretty sure. So that's war on the Eastern Front. Okay. Let's see. There is some change in scenery. So in World War II, when war changes from the Western Front to the Eastern Front, the only thing that really changes is the scenery. The weapons largely stay the same, and the mode of battle stays the same. So just because the geography changes, it doesn't really mean anything. That's just location. But the warfare is the same type of warfare, so it looks the same. When we go into history, we describe a battle because it is on, it's a one-day affair, right? So battles happen in a one-day affair. These battles, right? This was like a one day, maybe it's longer, I don't know, but it's usually one day, and then it ends. Let's see. So everything kind of happens at once. They divide, and there is a winner and a loser, right? So it all happens at once. Our battles don't happen like that. So I think World War II gives a much better modern day application to what it looks like. And what is the difference here? The difference is that if you want to mark this as 2016 and war on the Western Front, is that while this is a battle, it never ends, right? So we're going to put 2016, and you have the Western Front. And this is a battle, but in 2016, the war never ends, right? It just keeps going. The Western Front just keeps going. So even if you look down here, then this is going to tell us a big thing, right? Because this is why we're looking at World War II history. This is more a modern application. So you have the battle on the Western Front going continuously. It never ends. So you have the Eastern Front start, and it also goes. It doesn't just stop. It's not one singular battle. You have different days going on in between, and maybe you have some different events happening during this time period that show us signs of this battle, but the battle itself never stops, right? And it's interesting because when the Eastern Front starts, you still have the Western Front going. So when Rafia starts and you see war on the East, on the Eastern Front, you're still going to be seeing the same thing we've been seeing with war on the Western Front. You're still going to be seeing Trump fighting against the United States. You're going to see Trump fighting against his allies. You're never going to see him stop doing that. It's going to continue on. The only thing that's going to change is he's not going to be interested in being friends with Putin anymore. And now what I think is going to happen is the same information warfare that he's been using against the United States, Trump I'm talking about, his little Twitter account, his little shotgun that he has there, he's going to aim it at Russia. And that's what that Eastern Front is going to end up looking like. And it's going to cause all the spheres of influence it's going to cause Russia to lose all its spheres of influence. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, this is another thing. She says this is why it's so hard to watch the news because all you see is Trump. And all he does is talk against the UN and all his allies, and it's just horrifying to everyone. So let's see here. So you have battles in history, but the actual war, it's much bigger. And that's the other reason why she says it's important to follow the news, because all these little events, all these things that you see on the news, these are all part of the battle. So you need to be following this battle. You need to be seeing what's happening. So things to look out for in the news then. Anytime you see Saudi Arabia, that's not Arabia, Iran, Syria, what is it, Turkey maybe, Yemen, you need to look at that. South America, Arctic, obviously anything with Russia related, Balkan countries, anything EU related. These are all things we need to be looking out for on the news, right? And I think in part 10, she's going to go into the election. And I was wondering when she was going to talk about Alexandria AOC. I saw in the notes that she's going to have that in the next presentation. So it's going to be interesting what she talks about that when that comes up. But this is things we need to be watching out for. And also, anytime you have a message or an idea that sparks outrage and huge controversy, no matter how simple it is, whether it just be like, there's a disease with the chickens in the United States, look at the sources for that and look at it in the right stream of information to figure out if it's a huge controversial issue, what side it should be on, because we need to make sure we know where we're standing on these things. So actively doing research ourselves. Okay, I want us to consider particularly the Battle of Ipsus, she says here. That requires us to go back into our knowledge of Pyrrhus. So if we are to go back into our knowledge of Pyrrhus, what verse did we introduce his history in? Where do we find his history encapsulated? We have two places. So we have Daniel 8:8 and we have Daniel 11:4. Okay, so in Daniel 11:4, I'm just going to read it real quick. Let's see here. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. So the first one is Alexander the Great. That's the first horn. Who are the four winds, though? That's a reference to Daniel 8:8. Let me read that real quick. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. So who are the four winds? There's Cassander, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Ptolemy. So it's not going to go to his family line, right? It's not going to go to Alexander's descendants. In fact, the generals that came up after, if you guys recall, used Alexander's son. I think he had a son that was not quite right, and then his mom, and they were just passing them around as trophies or something, but they ended up getting killed. So it doesn't go to his posterity. His horn comes down and it goes to the four winds. So that would be Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. So because this king was plucked up, it's going to go to his generals. What Daniel does is he takes the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC, and he marks that, right? So there is a horn that is Alexander the Great, and here it uses a description of horns. There is a great horn that's broken, and that's Alexander and his death in 323 BC. And when this horn is broken, what comes up? Four horns. Historically, is that how it happens, though? It's not. So what happens is at the death of Alexander, there are many generals. They fight 4 wars known as the Diadochi Wars. These are the Diadochi Wars over here, as you can see. The first 2 get rid of most of the generals. But the third and the fourth, what issue do you have? You have our 4 generals, Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. And what's the relationship between them? They're all in an alliance, right? And they're in an alliance against Antigonus, which is the last great threat. So for the third and for the third and fourth Diadochi Wars, you have 4 famous generals combined, and their strength all combined for all 4 of them united was only equal to that of Antigonus's. So the fourth Diadochi War ends. No, that should be the third. That's a miss. That's not right. Sorry, where is this? So this one, it's not the fourth, it's the third that ends in a peace treaty, which ends up getting broken by, I think, Demetrius, if I remember right. So the third Diadochi War ends in a peace treaty because neither side can fully defeat the other. And then they come back together in the fourth war at the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC. Antigonus is killed, and you have the division into the 4 horns. So what Daniel does is he takes the death of Alexander and goes to the 4 horns, and everything is between that all becomes noise. It becomes irrelevant. He just wants Alexander and the 4 horns, and he brings those 2 together. So she reads a quote. This is, I don't even know what this is. Let me write this down because I don't know. It's in your notes, so you have it in there. 7 EJW PTUK 194.1. That's horrible handwriting. Don't mind that. It says Alexander stood up and ruled with great dominion. His genius seemed to promise the realization of his great scheme of consolidating the East and the West. So that's important. So Alexander, the great scheme, right, is bringing together East and West. Those are on the wrong sides. Okay. West, East. Okay. But at the height of his power he died. In Babylon his posterity and all of the royal house perished in the intrigues that followed. Antigonus, the commander-in-chief of the army in Asia, tried to reunite the satrapies and thus to continue as one of the empire that had passed from Babylon to Medo-Persia and then to Grecia. So Alexander, and Antigonus, they both attempt to do the same thing, which is unite East and West, right? But Ptolemy of Egypt, south, Lysimachus of Thrace, north, and Seleucus of Babylon, east, combined with Cassander of Macedonia in the west against him, says the Encyclopedia Britannica. And he fell in 301 BC at the Battle of Ipsus. In Phrygia, this decided the final break of the empire. It had been divided to the 4 winds of heaven, as the angel of the Lord said. So what they're saying here is that the work of Alexander was to unite East and West, and that was what he wanted to do, right? He dies, and it's divided, and then what does Antigonus do? He does the same thing. He's trying to reunite East and West. And when was the empire actually divided into the 4 winds of heaven? It was at the Battle of Ipsus. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out concretely, if I can find my cursor, why it is, right, that Daniel skips this history. Why is it we're skipping all these 22 years of history? And we're going to see here, where was I? Antigonus was uniting East and West. His empire was covering much of the same territories as Alexander. But these 4 generals kill Antigonus, and it is forever broken and can't be reunited. East and West can never be reunited. and you have the 4 horns. So Daniel ignores all of this history of the Diadochi Wars. What I would like to suggest he does is he takes it as a parable and takes out all the noise and looks at cause and effect. I just want us to look at how we use parables briefly. So we're going to go somewhere else really quick. But basically, if you have this one doing the same work that this one did, just on a smaller scale and failing, it's like a blip in history, right? It's not relevant to the situation. It's like, it kind of reminds me of the whole deadly wound thing, right? You have the deadly wound, and then it goes for a period of time because the death is happening. You have like someone bleeding out, they're slowly dying, and then you have the death, right? And in another presentation, she says the only thing that anyone ever remembers is the deadly wound. And when it came to 1989 and the fall of communism, everyone said that no one remembered 1991. No one cared about that. What stuck in the mind of the people was in 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell. That left a huge mark on everyone. After that, the death is going to come. No one cares. It's this huge event that everyone never thought would happen. All of a sudden breaks open and this huge thing happens. This is the important part. This is what history cares about. This is what history knows. So this was the big important part. This was the huge point where someone taking over all these huge territories is trying to unite East and West, and he dies. It was so sudden and so shocking. This is the big event. You have this little time period where Antigonus is trying to do the same thing, but he fails. And then you have it split into these 4 generals, which end up doing the rest of the work. So that's why this becomes irrelevant to the parable that Daniel is using, right? So we're going to go look at difference in parables. So let's see. I think I already read that and that. So we should be second to last. Okay, second to last page. So we're going to look at Matthew 13, 24 to 30. I'm going to read that real quick, and we're going to look at some parables and see what's going on here. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, The enemy hath done this. The servants said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So you have a story about farming. There's a man. He's going to sow his seed. What's going to come up? Wheat and tares, right? So we're going to have wheat and then weeds, tares, however you want to call them. Who is the farmer in this situation? Ellen White writes about this, and the farmer is God. She says that this is God. He sows the seed and out comes a crop, but you also get weeds. So now we're going to go to Mark 4, 26 to 32. And he said, So is the kingdom of God, as if a man should cast seed into the ground, and should sleep and rise night and day, and the seed should spring and grow up. He knoweth not how. For the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after the full corn in the ear. But when the fruit is brought forth, immediately he putteth in the sickle, because the harvest is come. And he said, Whereunto shall we liken the kingdom of God, or with the comparison shall we compare it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which when it's sown in the earth is less than all the seeds that be in the earth. But when it is sown, it groweth up, and becometh greater than all the herbs, and shooteth out great branches, so that the fowls of the air may lodge under the shadow of it. So here you have another farming story, right? They're identical. You have a farmer. He throws a seed into the ground. The rain waters it. It comes up. You're going to have your crop and you're going to have weeds. So in this parable, there's also going to be weeds, but you don't see them in the story, right? They're not here. So the story itself is identical. Who is the farmer in this parable in Mark? In verse 7, it says the farmer sleeps. Does God sleep? No. So we know this has to be man. He looks after his field to see the seed grow up. That's what God does. But the farmer, he knows not. Does the farmer know how it does that? He doesn't have any idea how it's growing. So can this be God? No. God knows how that crop grows. Man does not. So this is a story about us. We can sow. We have no idea how that grows. It's out of our control. There is still a seed there. It's still wheat. Have you ever seen a field pre-Monsanto days that didn't have any weeds in it? That never happened, and I don't think it happened in back in ancient times either. So this would have weeds too, right? Because not every person we plant a seed in, it grows into wheat. But are the weeds even in the story of Mark? They're not. You don't see them mentioned in there. If Jesus is pointing to a field and telling them that there are weeds, there are the same weeds here that there are here, but what are they saying? He is saying it's irrelevant and it's noise. What I'm trying to say is that when we come to the Battle of Ipsus, the way we treat the battle is the exact same way that we treat any parable. Some parts are relevant for the story and some parts are not relevant. And some parts are relevant for a different story. But there is also information that in the thread of the perspective from which we choose to see it, it becomes irrelevant and it becomes noise. So from the perspective of Mark, there are no weeds in the story. It's noise. It's irrelevant. So for the Matthew story, they are. For the Matthew story, the man is God. And for the Mark story, the farmer is us. It's a person. So from one perspective of Ipsus, Seleucus, this is the whole point. From one perspective of Ipsus, Seleucus can be the king of the north. And from another perspective, Seleucus can be a branch of the United States government. Okay? Why did she put that he's the king? That's weird. Anyways, we are not treating Ipsus in any new way than we are treating a parable in the New Testament. So let's go to Ipsus. So if you break down Ipsus, there has been 22 years of conflict, right? Like we saw in the other chart. Our four famous generals, most of them, this guy isn't involved because he ran away from the false report, but you have Ptolemy in there. So these guys, they're not even the strongest generals, right? Let's see. What was it? Cassander, he's a nobody, right? His father was great, but he isn't anyone special. Seleucus wasn't that important. They weren't anything significant. There were much more powerful generals, including Antigonus in this story, but they managed to survive, or they managed to defeat the others, or sometimes they just kind of waited by, and the really powerful ones just killed each other off. And it's these four that are left united against one common threat, which is Antigonus. So when we come to the Battle of Ipsus and we have to bring Pyrrhus into the story, you have Antigonus and his son Demetrius facing off in battle. Cassander, Lysimachus, and Seleucus is who they're facing off. And what happened to Ptolemy, he never showed up. From this perspective, he is irrelevant. He never showed up. He is in union with these three. He hears a false report that the battle was already over, and he flees back to Egypt to make sure that his own territory is safe. So Ptolemy isn't part of this battle. Who is supporting Demetrius, though? You have Pyrrhus, and he's over there. And in the story that we draw out with Pyrrhus in Macedonia, who is Demetrius? He is the king of the north. So Antigonus was the 5th general, the most powerful since Alex the Great. The name Antigonus means like or compared to the ancestor. And Antigonus was doing the work that the ancestor was doing, right? That Alexander the Great was. So that he is like or compared to Alexander the Great. That's the ancestor that he's being compared to. So you have Alexander and you have Antigonus. So Alexander equals Antigonus, right? They're both trying to unite East and West. This was like or compared to which ancestor? Alex. So what does Demetrius mean? Demetrius means Demeter, the goddess Demeter, which means harvest. Pyrrhus, he is the king of the south, and his name means flame red. I don't know if people have considered why there is Red Square, Red October, and Red everything when it comes to the Soviet Union. But see, the other thing is it came to China also, so I'm wondering if that's going to end up being important, but that's just a side note. So Antigonus is like or compared to the ancestor. Demetrius means harvest, and he is supported in this battle by Pyrrhus. So what happens in this battle? You have Seleucus turns up at the last minute, and he is able to drive 400 to 500 elephants. The exact number is unknown. He just returned from his campaign east, and he drives them between Demetrius and Antigonus. They cut Antigonus off, and they wear him down until he is killed. In a previous battle, Antigonus has lost an eye. So he was known to have quite a... Sorry, just a question. If you had to name a branch of government for the FBI to be a part of, which one would it be? It's not legislative, and it's not... Is it executive?
Judicial.
Are you sure it's judicial? Because I thought it was the executive branch that works with all the time.
The executive branch is the president.
I know, but they directly answer to the president. They don't answer to the judicial, do they? Or maybe they do. I don't know.
Judicial is having to do with law, isn't it?
Right. But what does FBI... They don't, like, make laws. They don't pass laws.
I ever heard Victoria is saying executive too, but I think it's judicial.
They never talk to the judicial, though.
May I? It looks like, well, okay, I may not know it, but FBI usually their head is just they report to Justice Department. So,
Justice Department, okay.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm wondering, because if Seleucus was the one with the elephants and he was the one with the information, didn't you have the FBI and the CIA and the intelligence agencies that had to come out with information about Hillary? They came out at the time where it benefited Trump, so they split Trump and Hillary apart, and they wore Hillary down with the information that they came out with, right? So I'm wondering if Seleucus is representing that side of things, because Seleucus was the one who came in with the elephants, which is information warfare. And the FBI and the CIA are the ones who came in with the information warfare. And they're the ones who weakened Hillary when all that stuff came out everywhere, isn't it? I know part of it was Russia with the WikiLeaks, but there was part of it with their reports from the FBI too. And they were having congressional meetings with her that were cast over the internet before the election was happening. So I don't know, I'm thinking of if that's what that might be. Anyways, where was I? They cut Antigonus off and they wear him down until he is killed. In a previous battle, Antigonus had lost an eye, so he was known to have quite a fearsome appearance. He was known as Antigonus Monothalmus, Antigonus the one eye. So in previous battle, he is born with he loses one eye in a previous battle. In the Battle of Ipsus, he loses the other one when he dies. I want us to consider the application. Are Antigonus and Demetrius fighting each other? In 2016 election, were Clinton and Trump fighting each other? Did Clinton have anything that Trump wanted? Or did Trump have anything that Clinton wanted? Neither of them wanted what the other had. So Trump didn't want the Clinton Foundation. Clinton didn't want Trump Tower. They didn't have anything either one wanted. So what do they both want? They both want the presidency. So they're fighting something outside of themselves, something independent to themselves. They're fighting for control of the three branches of the United States government. But from this perspective, they are not fighting each other. They're just fighting each other because there is something that they want, but the other doesn't have it. Hillary Clinton is Antigonus. She is like or compared to the ancestor. Who is the ancestor? What about the one that wrote the Constitution? If we're going to go back to Alex the Great, who united East and West, who brought unity? That the ship that protected and defended the people since 1798, that is the ancestor she stands for. So the one that protected and defended the people, this is George Washington. This is those original founders that wrote the Constitution. So that is who she stands with. She is like or compared with the ancestor, and she was uniting that empire. And so was Obama. If we look into what Obama did, we should consider the Iran deal and even the way he handled Russia. He held the world back from the brink of war. Whoa. I don't know how that happened. Oh, whoa, that was weird. That was really weird. Anyways, that was creepy. Okay. If you think about it, this is kind of a sphere of influence here, the three branches of government, isn't it? Because once you have like a Democrat or a liberal in government, it changes all the branches of government. They all change. So you have a different sphere of influence coming in with either side. So they're still fighting for spheres of influence, even when it comes to the three branches of government. So that's where she ended. So basically, we have Alexander is Antigonus, who is Clinton, who is George Washington, and the founders. I don't know where those arrows keep coming from. I don't know what I did. It was really weird. I think this is dying or something. Anyways, that's where she ended kind of abruptly, and we're going to go into part 10 on Friday night. So do you guys have any questions? If you guys want to talk, now is the time.
Well, you mentioned about Clinton and you mentioned about Clinton and Trump didn't have anything each of them wanted from each other. But I can't think of any other president that wanted anything but the presidency. You know?
Yeah. That's all either wanted. So, let's see. Operating under the jurisdiction of the United States Department of Justice, the FBI is also a member of the United States intelligence community and reports to both the Attorney General and Director of the National Intelligence. Okay, DOJ. Yeah. So, I don't know. I just think it's interesting because Seleucus has the elephants, which are the information warfare. So who had the information warfare of the three branches of government that separated Trump and Clinton? Whichever one that's connected to I think the intelligence community would have to be the one. So I don't know. Anyways, let's see here. This was a good map. I liked this one. This helped me understand her Arctic explanation of things. So it's in the notes. I sent it out so you guys all have it, but that was a good map. Okay. And that's all I got. All I got for today. Sorry if it was boring or anything.
It wasn't boring. It was very interesting, in fact. But I have a question about that part where she talks about Matthew 13 and in Luke. So these stories that they, even Parminder kept bringing up, are they, well, I guess they are, but I couldn't find any more explanation. Why would they put it into the narrative than just to say that not every detail is important. It depends on the context of what you're trying to say. Like
Yeah.
what, from which angle? Yeah.
That's the only reason. That is the only reason they had it in there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. It's to help explain Daniel 11, which if she keeps talking about it, I'm guessing there's still a lot of people who have struggles with that one, but I don't know.
So all this history you were on your presentation, that was part of the third and fourth Diadochi War, you're saying, or just the third?
No, the third she only mentions just to say that it was there and it was something that Antigonus fought. The only one that we really tend to focus on is the Fourth Diadochi War. And the only thing that the Fourth Diadochi War shows up on our lines is the Battle of Ipsus. That's what the Fourth Diadochi War was. It was the Battle of Ipsus is where it all ended and Antigonus died. So.
And you were saying there was a pact made and broken on the third Diadochi War?
Yeah, that's back in the history for that. There was a pact, there was a treaty because Cassander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, and Lysimachus, them combined, they were only strong enough to be equal to the strength of Antigonus. So they had the Battle of the Third Diadochi War and it ended in a draw. There was a treaty, and I'm pretty sure that it was Demetrius who broke that treaty. I think he killed someone.
It was when he removed the dictator from Athens.
That's okay. That's what I was thinking. The puppet king of Cassander, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Demetrius broke that treaty when he killed the puppet king of Cassander, and then you have the Fourth Diadochi War come in.
Your presentation was most informative.
It was a lot. It was a lot of words, and it was a lot to put together.
I did a presentation on Pyrrhus, so it kind of brought it all back to me when you were going over the maps and everything.
It helps things sink in when you have multiple pictures, multiple graphs, multiple things. So when you do your presentation thing, if you can add those in, I know for me personally, they help me. That's why I put them in, thinking they might help someone else. Especially
really
those
cool maps. Really cool maps.
That Arctic one, I was shocked that was there, and it matches exactly what she has been showing in her presentation, where you literally have, because she draws those circle within a circle, and then the X is all around it in her presentation. So I'm pretty sure she got it from that map. I'm pretty sure that's what she's referencing. Which I've been finding that happen a lot. Whenever she talks about something, I feel like when I Google it, I find the source where she was talking about it from, or YouTube it. I don't know. It's been happening a lot lately, but it's useful. And it just goes to show that it's readily available for everyone to learn and figure it out. So we can all search the stuff and find the same things she's been finding if we just, make a concerted effort.
And finding those things leads to other things, which is all good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this for me tonight.
It's all good. Yeah. No problem.
Good presentation.
Next week, remember, we're starting our devotionals in the morning, guys. Devotionals on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then prayer meeting on Tuesday.
Starting the 19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I saw Sister Victoria, thank you so much for sending all that out for 3 weeks in advance. That was really awesome.
We're looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. With that, let's go ahead and close in prayer.
Thank you, Adriana. I really like it how you tell the story as your own.
I don't understand it if I don't do that. It's hard to remember it if I don't do that. So it helps to remember things. And you guys know that's generally the direction we want to go into, and that's what Tyler told everyone at Portola. is, and it takes a lot more time to do this. I can tell you from experience that, especially when I try to write it down, because there was a lot of information in this, I couldn't just remember everything she said. So I try to take my own side notes, and it takes a lot more time. But again, you understand the information better. But he said, take her presentation and write it down in your own words and present it that way. Because when you're looking at a paragraph of her information and then you try to rewrite it in your own words, it really makes you have to understand what you're reading. It's pretty very important. So anyways, let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll close. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for that wealth of knowledge and information we were able to receive. We ask that you please imprint it on our minds so that we don't forget and so that we can utilize it later. Help us, Lord, to be able to understand and comprehend more and more principles and ideas and information that we need to know. Help us to be able to teach each other better, and help us to be able to be more efficient gospel workers in your message. Help us, Lord, to be able to handle your truths with care and in a good, honest way so we don't mess anything up. Continue to be with us in our minds as we continue to study and grow in your message. Help us to continue to have our lives purified by you. Help us to leave ourselves up to the molding of the Holy Spirit, and help us to be more obedient to you, Lord, so we can be better for the sakes of the people that we need to take the message to. We ask that you continue to be with everyone this week, and we pray all these things in the Lord Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.